Hello, this is the Ascended Master Djehuty speaking, aka Thoth, Thoth, Toth, Toth, Saint Germain and Merlin, and others. We're speaking through this channel today to support you in unearthing, healing, resolving, releasing, and altering your relationship with a particular experience that is available to humans at any given time. This is a topic that is very difficult to deal with, whether you are on one side of the experience or the other, whether you have done this or you are left after somebody else you know or care about has done this. And yet today we also wish to frame this topic in terms of the multidimensional nature of your soul and how that comes through in any given life. This is referencing the fact that emotions that you have, quandaries, passions, desires, fears, concerns, anxieties, the most important ones are shared across time between all of your soul's various lives lived at different points along the Earth timeline. You have been trained to call these past lives. We prefer to call them your soul's other lives or your other lives lived along the Earth timeline. We wish to speak about the effects of suicide, about the free will, about the effects on the person who makes this choice and carries out this action. And then also talk about the effects on the soul. Talk about the effects to that soul in other lives. And then also to talk about the effects on others and what the learning opportunity or invitation is for others when this happens. The driving force in your human life is your free will. You have choice at all times. You always have choice. Suicide is simply one other choice. As we have begun this exploration, note any reactions, any hair trigger or knee-jerk energetic emotional reactions you may have when we use the word suicide. There is such a terrible set of connotations: despair, loss, grief, lost time, wasted life, lost youth, wasted youth, all of these different things that get attached to this word, when in fact we are simply using a word that speaks about one option that a human has when it comes to free will living any given life along the Earth timeline. To begin this exploration, I'm inviting you to check your reactions. Not check as in stop, but to be aware of your reactions. At any time during this teaching, note what you react to. Make a mental note. As you listen again later, perhaps after you've taken in the whole teaching and you have some perspective on the view that I wish to offer you, then go back through, listen again, and make some notes on paper about what has really triggered you. So whatever does trigger you will be difficult or promise to open a box deep in your psychic basement that is full of difficult emotions, painful memories of one kind or another, and also visceral sensations of pain and painful memories. So this might not be easy. This might not, whatever comes up for you, be simple. And it may be straightforward, but you will have to look at parts of you that carry some shame or judgment or fear, pain, and these pained and anxious memories of what has happened in the past. As we speak to you today, if you are not familiar with the effect that we aim to have as we communicate with you on a regular basis, or at any given time when we do, we seek to access parts of you that are ready to heal. Healing in this case means admitting into consciousness some things that are difficult for your human self to look at and experience. Being willing to be with feelings that might be challenging. Change your mind about why these events have happened and what the feelings that you have about them are about and what it means. And then resolve to move forward being integrated and more whole, with parts of you that have to date, kept out of the way because of the pain that they carry. You do not want them on the surface, so they go away and they hide often. That's what healing is today in terms of this conversation. To begin with, we must explain about soul, what it is, and what happens in the incarnation process, in the beginning and the end of it, birth and death. And this will not be an extended conversation, but it will be enough to set up the conversation about suicide so you understand more about what the soul is about and how this particular choice affects soul in the long run. To begin with, soul is a portion of divine consciousness. Soul has never forgotten its true nature as a divine being, as a creative being, as a trafficker in love, love being the currency of power in the universe. We have recently shared this phrase with the channel, and he finds it a bit inspiring and intriguing, and his ears perk up. The currency of power in the universe is love. Your soul is always aligned with love. Your soul forgets nothing. Your soul forfeits nothing. Your soul is the divine. And your soul has, so to speak, erupted, bled through into this dimension, time-space dimension in which you live in these physical bodies that age and die. You erupt, your soul's consciousness erupts into this dimension. All of you seek meaning, to know that you belong here, or that the universe has an order, or that there is a benevolent decision maker at work, or at play, depending on how you wish to see things. When you understand what soul is, what it is about, what it is trying to do, and how you are related to it, and how it is related to you, some of that sense of meaning becomes available, and this is why we come through this channel. This is why this channel has made himself available to provide these teachings. It is in his desire to seek and create meaning, and to share with you how to do so as well. And understanding soul is a major component of this. Understanding the life and death process in general is a portion of this part of conversation about soul. Soul never forgets its true nature as a divine, powerful, creative being that traffics in love, and that only loves. The decision by all that is was made to split off into apparently discrete pieces, apparently separate parts, apparently discrete beings. This is you and everyone you've ever met, including animals and plants and people, and the earth itself, in fact. These portions, when embodied, such as a human or an animal, forget the true nature of soul. The soul intends that its embodied extensions forget its true nature. And it comes here to learn about what it means to come here, to learn about what it means to make choices, to perceive or the presence or the lack of free will, to make choices, or to have choices made for one, in the case of perceiving no free will, and dealing with the results of making choices and not making choices. Free will is your power as a divine being, making a choice. And then, of course, relating this to the idea that the currency of power is love. Any choice you make from love increases your energetic currency, increases your spiritual power. And any choice made from anxiety or fear or tension, fear, the second of the two categories, love or fear, faith or fear, diminishes your spiritual currency and your spiritual power, your energetic currency and power. But your soul has never forgotten. During these rapidly changing times on Earth, according to the Earth timeline, you are all preparing for December of 2012. This is rapidly approaching. Yet this Mayan calendar has, from our perspective, already ended, and you are in an adjustment phase of adapting to certain endpoint in the opportunity to evolve consciousness. And you can begin now, you can begin 10 years ago, you can begin in 300 years, but the endpoint that determines or indicates the ability to succeed at this evolution begins in October of 2011 according to the Earth timeline, for a variety of factors we will not go into today. I mean, the reasons behind this. Suffice it to say that the evolution of consciousness has been underway for as long as anything has existed. And now you have access to more tools in your toolbox. You are able to access past lives, for example. You are able to heal things much more quickly. You are able to understand the context of this life in terms of your soul's journey. You are able to expand consciousness in ways that were not possible prior to October of 2011. This is the bottom line. Many teachings that have come through this channel were not possible to come through prior to October of 2011, specifically because the evolution of consciousness was not ripe yet. It was not complete. This is not to say that everybody is now evolved. It is to say that the tools are now available. And your free will, your choice, if you make yourself available to evolve and heal and release and shed and change and alter your perceptions of why things have happened to you and why you have chosen to do things across time, and then you have the opportunity to evolve at a much quicker rate than ever before. One of the results, if you decide to be willing to do this, is that memories from the past can bleed through from past lives into this life, other lives across your timeline, past and future, in fact. From the soul's perspective, all of your lives are happening simultaneously. And your intense fear of heights in this life is probably sourced in falling from a great height in another life, or fearing it. Try that on for size. Anything that you are deeply afraid of probably echoes something going on in the Earth timeline somewhere else. Now, with this ripening of the evolution of consciousness, this availability of the tools, and the what I have not mentioned yet, the dissolution of barriers between dimensions, including the partitions within your consciousness, as these divisions and barriers and partitions have melted away with the end of the Mayan calendar in October of 2011, what has bled through from the past that seems somewhat significant becomes out of proportion important. Becomes critically important to understand, alter, shift, and change your relationship with. Suicide is one of those experiences that some of you have experienced. If you have in this life thought about suicide as a viable option or something you absolutely cannot do, this speaks to a relationship across time with the idea that you should end your life. It is not true that every human has in some life been a suicide. But it is true that everybody experiences pain to the point of considering ending life. One's relationship and perception of how to relate to a divine power is much to do with this. Or I should say colors and affects any given human's relationship with the notion of suicide, because in many earth religions, suicide has been frowned upon for different reasons. And for some people, even without religion, there is a sense of a moral code that holds suicide as a negative, something that is unacceptable. And of course, philosophers are the religious without God, right? Philosophers are the same as religious people. Just perhaps a different vocabulary, different word set, different scope. But they are trying to figure out the meaning of life. They're trying to figure out what is happening. And so philosophers have also spent a great deal of time, philosophers and theologians and moralists, relating to suicide, trying to understand what has happened and what the option is and why it is or is not acceptable. I wish to share with you that there is no being outside yourself frowning upon suicide. Your spirit guides and the ascended masters and angels, divine intelligences floating around, want you to love yourself enough to create opportunity and to create experience and to enjoy being alive as you learn about making choices and expressing free will and dealing with the results. But there is no external God sitting on a marble throne handing out demerits for those who kill themselves. This is not what is happening here in this situation. So now that you understand a little more about the nature of soul, it does not forget its true nature. and it exists outside time, observing the results of your choices. Let us look at the impact on the soul of an individual's choice to commit suicide. Essentially, the soul learns from every choice that a human makes, and so a person who commits suicide does not damage the soul. Again, there is no external authority figure, including soul, that is judging you. Soul does not judge you because you end your life. Soul says, my personality in this life didn't perceive that there was hope, didn't perceive that I was able to proceed. Find a solution, find love, create something meaningful, get out of this bind, stop judging myself, whatever it is. The soul is not judging the person who commits suicide. The soul essentially checks off on its list of possible experiences, yes, the ending of one's own life. Yes, I've now experienced that. That's what it feels like. So that soul is observing the human feelings, the feelings that lead up to the event and the choice, what it feels like to do that, and then the after effects, and how across time, in other lives, at other points on the Earth timeline, those other humans are affected by this choice somewhere on the timeline. As the channel has integrated some of these teachings that we offer about suicide without having gone into this full-blown teaching as we are today, he has observed, and he has also spoken with, as a medium, he has spoken with the spirits of the deceased, both those who are unprocessed and therefore kind of hanging around on Earth, and those who have processed, gone through orientation, and quote-unquote gone into the light. Having worked as a medium with both of these kinds of people from these scenarios, as well as me and his spirit guides, he has worked quite a number of times with people who have had past lives of suicide. And this thought comes back. Sometimes the visceral memories of having done something to the self. So this is one of the effects that must be dealt with. The afterlife effects of suicide are the multi-life effects of suicide. It is not a guarantee that a person who commits suicide is tortured in the afterlife. It is not necessarily true that that person does not cross into the light. Every spirit, every bit of soul, every bit of consciousness that separates from its physical body, which is to say at the moment of death separates, has the option of altering course and altering perception and opening up his or her mind and seeing the truth of what's happening, receiving guidance, and going into what you would call the light. Crossing over is a very common phrase among humans working with life and death and those who have died. But the person certainly can, the spirit, newly departed spirit, certainly can stay in a state of torment. It depends upon the journey. It depends upon what purpose suicide serves in a life. And to your human mind, it may seem that the only purpose that suicide serves is to end a life. Sometimes, in fact, suicide serves the other purposes. One of them being, in fact, proving to the self that one can manage one's destiny. Proving to the self that one can make a choice, and therefore that is empowering. So there are instances of suicide where everybody who is surviving is, the person has lived in various states of despair or levels of pain, kills the self, and this proves to the self that the person has the power to make a choice and has the right to be the operator of his or her life. And in the final analysis, from the soul's perspective, from goddesses and God's perspective, that can be a positive in the long run. Wrap your mind around that. See if you can open your mind to this. This is not something that any human would at first glance open to. And as I say these things, the channel is also with his jaw dropped a little bit. Try it on for size. Suicide, from the soul's perspective, can be proof that the human has free will. If you are writhing in your seat, or your skin is crawling, or some part of you itches energetically or literally, please understand that this rattles a cage somewhere within you. If you do not know somebody who has suicided, and if you do not remember doing this, and if you have not ever thought about it, you're in the minority. So even those who have not done, you might be listening to this, and you might have an itch, you might have something, you want to turn this recording off. You want to stop thinking about this. And perhaps you're very clear you've never killed yourself. Perhaps you have an emotional memory, a visceral feeling that this is not something you have ever done or would do. You have had it happen around you. Despair has happened in your life. Pain has occurred. And you have felt between a rock and a hard place numerous times along the Earth timeline. Again, what one thinks about God and what God is, and what God thinks about life and death and free will, these conditionings, these states of conditioning and levels, will affect how you receive this. And so understand that different religions you've been raised in across the Earth timeline do affect how you hear this, including the religion you may have been raised in this life, if there was one. One of the reasons we're offering this teaching as a means for healing is to help you accept your divine power as a being with free will. Your power is in trafficking in love, but it is also in free will. And then, of course, you increase your currency, your energetic, emotional, spiritual currency, if you make choices based in love, and you decrease it if you make choices based in fear. But you are Goddess and God. You are the divine intelligence incarnated in human form. I'm going to invite you to do a meditation wherein you make peace across time with the idea that you might have hurt yourself. Suicide is an extreme example of this. But the judgments that you would carry if you across time, or we wish to say at some point on the Earth timeline have done this, the judgments that you carry about self run deep. It is a crime against nature, you have heard. It is a crime against God. It is a crime against life. You have heard many things about how suicide is a crime. Through human eyes, you seek to create society, order, law, stability, structure. And yet there are individuals who cannot play nicely with others and cannot play nicely with themselves and have ended their lives. So I invite you to sit down and do a meditation, get into a grounded state, and forgive yourself across time for hurting yourself in any and all ways, including suicide, if that has been part of your story. If that has been a choice, if it has. You may not consciously remember it. There are those who do. The channel remembers it very directly. The channel often, when he is afraid, he feels his wrists being vulnerable. He is very clear that in some life, across the Earth timeline, he has cut his wrists. He has killed himself. That is the one that comes forward first, but there are other ways. Because there are some individuals who have experienced such despair over time that they do not know what to do. They do not know what else to do other than check out. And nothing but death truly checks one out. And this is a process the channel goes through to deal with these physical memories. But what is more important is to deal with the attitude that leads to doing violence to oneself. And this is primarily what one must deal with in other lives. Self-destructive patterns of various kinds are not as extreme as suicide, but they are. You might know somebody who seems to have drank or drugged or eaten him or herself to death. And sometimes behaviors over the long term can seem destructive patterns that are leading to death. So perhaps if somebody does something acute in the short term and commits suicide, It's sometimes more difficult than watching somebody eat himself to death over 40 years or drink herself to death over 15 years. So one of the reasons we're asking you to open to this teaching is so that you can make peace with the fact that you have the power to hurt yourself. To have some acceptance surrounding the truth that you have free will. That you can treat yourself well or poorly. You can nurture and pamper yourself. You can nurture yourself, or you can end your life. This is such a deep topic for many people who have and have not had this experience across time, because if you have not had it, you have observed others experience it. Others choose it. So the first primary effect on the self across time is to have to deal with the fact of having committed such violence on one's own self. I would like for you now to make peace with the fact that you have free will, and that you can choose anything, including to end your own life in a horrible way. I also want you to make peace with the fact that as part of this free will, you can treat yourself kindly. And I'm inviting you to draw a line in the sand, and whatever judgments that you have carried about yourself, whether related to this topic, the thoughts of suicide or memories of having done it, I want you to draw a line in the sand and make the decision going forward to treat yourself with more kindness, no matter what it is that has come before, no matter what it is that you have chosen. I want you to accept the fact that you have enough power to remove yourself from the human game. You have that strength. I want you to accept this, and I would enjoy it if you wanted to be here and play with us. I personally would enjoy this. The channel would, everybody else would too. But you must recognize the fact that you have the strength, you have the right to do anything. This is essentially what many earth religions try to keep you from understanding. Because if you have the right to do anything, it's either anarchy, or people leave, or people end their lives if they're feeling despair, and the religion and the society and the family and the culture cannot survive. So there is this huge push to demonize any choice to check out, especially suicide. We want you to accept your power and then to choose to stay here anyway. We want you to recognize your right to live or die and then choose to live anyway. The fact is that if you are here, your soul has chosen that you experience being here. So I would also like you to draw a line in the sand and any wasted time in this life, any wasted time because of another life ending early, because of a suicide or any other factor. I would like for you to make peace with the fact that there is nothing lost. I want you to accept the truth that there's no such thing as a mistake and a waste of time, because you have learned something valuable through the experience, whatever it was. We return to this precept, this truth. The currency of power in the universe is love. Currency and power might seem words that don't go with love, but understand that love is the exchange of energy. Love is the embodiment. The power of love is when you embody the energy of love. And it is what makes the world go round. Though, of course, that looks like money, which is tied to power through your dualistic way of looking at things. But understand that true strength is not about how many resources you have, or connections, or strength, or vigor, or health, or youth. It is not about money and houses. It is not about access to resources. True power is about love. Being willing to see all parts of yourself and then love all parts of yourself unconditionally. Being willing to see all parts of yourself and then unconditionally love each and every one of them. This is one of the things we are doing here today, inviting you to look at parts of you that have been shaped by committing suicide or witnessing it around you, or considering it or thinking about it or obsessing about it or focusing on it. Continuing with the individual effects across time. Given this notion of this truth, the currency of power in the universe is love. When a person ends his or her life, this person cannot see this truth. Person does not believe in the power of generating love. Perhaps has seen the power of love leave him or her through the end of a relationship or the loss of strength through duality, resources, connections, opportunities, things like this, and does not understand the true nature of you as an energetic divine being. And that strength comes from self-love. We are told about usefulness and appropriateness. This is how we are trained through human culture in over many thousands of years. And yet, the value that you put on yourself is everything. When you end your own life, you stop valuing yourself. If you have arrived at that through a process of navigating duality, I do not have this, and so therefore I am not strong. I do not have this. I lost this. I cannot get this, no matter what I do, etc. And I therefore am not who I need to be. If your self-definition is tied to material reality, you will be disempowered, no matter how many resources you have. If you have $3 to your name and you tie your sense of self-worth and your ability and your willingness to love yourself to those $3, what will happen, do you think? Nothing good. Eventually you'll have to spend it to buy something to eat. If you have $300 bagillion million trillion and you identify your willingness to love yourself with that sum, the sum will change. Eventually you will buy something. The sum will go down. So you must be wary in the present moment, each and every one of you, of tying your willingness to love yourself, your ability to be kind to yourself, to material resources, material reality. You must reconnect with your power as a divine being, which is in love, acceptance, kindness, compassion, and here's a big one, giving yourself the benefit of the doubt. It will be much easier for each of you to give other people the benefit of the doubt when it comes down to it, and you must do this for yourself. The benefit of the doubt is a transaction based in love. Give it to yourself. When it comes to this conversation about suicide, this is a very intense and serious topic. Look at if there are any lingering ideas about what life is for and what God or the universal life or the earth or whomever, insert name of deity here, what that other intelligence that seems to have power over you or perhaps seems that it should have power over you, observe what you believe life is for and how other people have taught you and told you and what you have absorbed. The fact is that life is a learning process. Life is a learning journey for souls, for portions of divine intelligence having temporarily forgotten their true nature as powerful creators, to learn about how to be here through free will while being tied to time. That's what's happening here. You're observing the effects of free will, observing the results of your choices. That's what's happening. Anything else that you find is a belief you have absorbed or created, probably absorbed and adopted from somebody else, whether directly taught to you or modeled to you. When you find yourself in despair, perhaps when you're in despair you do not get to the place of feeling suicidal or thinking that you should end your life. But, again, that is an extreme, and this is essentially a teaching about despair as opposed to suicide, though it looks like it's about suicide, because we go straight to the most difficult place, and then we want to help you understand the spectrum of possibilities that and the range that can lead up to this extreme. But being in despair, I challenge you to commit now to remembering that love is the currency of power in the universe the next time you are in despair. And I want you to step back from the part of you that feels the despair and say, yes, I feel despair. This part of me feels despair. And ask yourself, how in this situation have I decided I am not the power of love? What is it that has led me to this place of believing that I am not the source of love? That I am powerless because of some external circumstance, and that love cannot fix it, change it, alter it, vibrate me out of this scenario. What belief have I given my power to that keeps me in despair? This begins the process of self-analysis, self-awareness, that I want you to do with a gentleness, a kindness and compassion, accepting that parts of you that you carry with you and very often identify with. Parts of you have fears that are based in memories of real situations and real dynamics, actual events that have caused a lot of pain. You are an energetic being, carrying multiple frequencies, and operating from multiple frequencies at once. On a regular basis, you are being, the radio dial of your consciousness is being tuned to this fear, that joy, that passion, that desire, that sense of lack, this love, always back and forth, left and right, and all over the spectrum. These are parts of you vibrating in different ways. These are parts of you vibrating in different frequencies. We have said that there are two motivations, right? Two vibrations. Two places. The context we brought it up in was the context of you can make a choice from love or from fear. Faith or fear. And when it comes to these frequencies on which you vibrate and broadcast, there are varying degrees. It is not all black and white, but look through the gray and you find black or white. Is this loving or is this something other than loving? Is this full of faith or is this something else? It is very easy to see. Part of you will want to not surrender identities developed through fear and pain. And so there will be some inner conversation, but I want you to commit to the inner barometer of what is true and what is loving and what is not. And to see the difference very clearly, immediately, no matter what. We return to this issue of doing violence to the self, scale being relative, suicide being an extreme. When it comes to suicide, when it comes to doing violence to the self, view this as a choice. View this as a choice that your empowered divine self has made, even if from a place of fear. Classify it as a choice based in fear. I cannot do this, I cannot be this, so I'm going to do this to hurt myself, etc. And draw a line in the sand and make a commitment going forward to be kinder to yourself, to be more understanding, to be more accepting. In one way, to kill yourself can look like a lack of imagination, but it is a lack of faith and a lack of love. If, for example, somebody seems very loving to others, but exists in a state of despair and ultimately kills the self, you think, well, this person was such a kind and loving soul. This person was so generous. That just doesn't make any sense. But see that the person was loving everybody else and not the self. You are the hardest person for you to love unconditionally. And when suicide is a factor in a karmic story in the journey of soul, it is about love. It is about having faith in the self as being the source of love. If you are feeling very intrepid, and many of you I invite to my sphere do, you have these wonderful shining moments of intrepidness. I'm not sure if that is a word. Being intrepid. You can sit down and begin the affirmation. Do this daily for months. I am the source of love. I choose to be the source of love. I am the source of love. I am the source of love. And you do this over and over again to essentially press on knots, blocks, and bruises in your energy field for parts of you that do not believe that you are the source of love. If you perceive that suicide has been an issue in your karmic history, if you have the memory of killing yourself, or if you have the thought in your head in this life during any period, understand that it's an issue across time. If this is true of you, do this affirmation. I am the source of love. This will call forth parts of you that do not believe it. And then you, gently, kindly, with understanding and the benefit of the doubt and compassion, work with these parts of you to change their minds about what is really happening here. They do not believe you are the source of love. They believe somebody else is the source of love, and it is denied. That somebody else has not given it. Mom, dad, wife, husband, child, sibling, God, universe, goddess. Anybody who is perceived to be the source of love who is not the self will lead to the person feeling a lack of love. It is inevitable. Now let us speak briefly about the rock and the hard place, the space between them. Faith is the element that is missing when the space between a rock and a hard place leads to the end of a life, suicide. When a problem comes up in our lives, we are invited to look at what manifestation is creating this, or what thing in our energy field, what frequency are we vibrating or broadcasting that creates this scenario. When we find ourselves between two difficult places, making a choice is feeling that we must make one choice, but both of our options are terrible or lead to potentially terrible things. We must adopt a bird's eye view in order to understand what is truly happening. What am I supposed to be learning here? Now, in those moments, we will feel the emotional pressure. Of course, this is what happens to humans. We learn through difficulty, we learn through emotions, we learn through the expression of free will. If it is in fact simply a matter of making one terrible choice over another, the mind, of course, will come in and do a lot of analysis and technical analysis. And a lot of self-doubt will arise. I shouldn't make any choice. How could I make this choice? If I make this choice, so-and-so suffers. I want you to understand that when you trust yourself, when you decide to trust your instinct and intuition, you will be presented opportunities to strengthen that through practice. So do that now, so that if you ever find yourself between a rock and a hard place, you're a little better off. I also wish to say that if you make a choice that causes another suffering, it is a co-creation between souls. And those souls love each other. The image comes to mind of a parent who must give up the child for adoption. How painful is this for that parent? How difficult. That choice, which could have been fueled by many, many things, many, many human factors. But that choice could not be made if the souls of all involved did not agree to participate, including the child, including the family or families that child went to, including the people who facilitated the transfer of the child. All of these souls are in cahoots to provide the right scenarios for each human involved. The channel uses this phrase cahoots. I use the phrase conspiracy of love. and he has begun to adopt it, and recently he taught a class where the students asked him at the end to write a book with that title, The Conspiracy of Love, because it is such a powerful idea. To imagine that every difficult scenario you have experienced in your life and relationship, and the responses of others to you when you have a difficult time, these are all based in the conspiracy of love between souls. They are, as the channel says, in cahoots together to provide the right sort of experiences for each other, and all souls only love each other. Everything that happens between humans happens because souls love each other. So as you look at it, making a choice that's difficult and you can't do it because you'll hurt somebody, understand that person has a soul. That person's soul is divine consciousness, setting up him or her. So trust yourself. Make the right choice for yourself. Consider it with compassion. Consider others, yes, please. Because it teaches you about your obligations, your soul contracts. It teaches you about your expression of free will and enables fine-tuning the process of coming to know what is best for you by considering the effects on others. That's what I'm saying. But when you make the choice that is right for you and somebody else suffers, this is a co-creation of souls. This is not to let anybody off the hook for hurting each other. This is an invitation for everybody to accept responsibility for all that happens to him or her. Also, being between a rock and a hard place either results from loss or the threat of loss. And this is a relationship, or if this is security and safety, this is money, this is a position or status, or this is love and acceptance. Anything that a person might lose, in fact, the person to grow as a spiritual being is ready to lose. Astrologically, running through the channel's mind is this comment. We will share it with you because it is useful. Astrologically, Pluto transits get a terrible rap for destroying things. And the fact is that when Pluto comes to touch something, something needs to be destroyed. Something is ready to pass into the next phase of its existence, even if that means dissolution or erosion, or in his terminology, being bulldozed, so that something else can be built and grown in its place. So if you are facing loss, or you are faced with a difficult choice because you have already lost something, this is a spiritual evolution opportunity for you to understand your identification with what you possess. That was a brief detour as we talk about the rocks and the hard places and finding ourselves between them in our human lives. When I say a phrase such as believing in the power of love, this sounds like it's from a song, a ballad, and the musicians have long hair and tight pants. And this sounds like something that is a romantic ideal. But in fact, as we have said several times during this teaching, the currency of power in the universe is love. When you find yourself challenged and you face despair, you feel there is no hope, I challenge you to locate the part of yourself that can have faith that you are the divine, creating an experience for yourself that is difficult. We acknowledge it is difficult. Please accept with compassion that you're having a difficult time when you're in such a state. Parts of you may see no hope, may see no reason to have hope. Find the part of you that can connect with soul more directly by understanding that you are here for a reason. And you do have free will. So I also ask you to draw a line in the sand, given all you've experienced in all of your life thus far. Look at all the situations in which you perceive you do not have choice or free will. And I want you to rewrite the history of why those experiences happened. Every time you perceive that you have not had free will and you were forced into a position to make a decision or something like this, you are in fact learning about free will. Learning about the experience of being guided by beliefs that limit your perceptions of your divine nature, I want you to drink this in. At any time, and we're going to repeat it, at any time that you find yourself having been forced into a position, you are learning about free will by confronting the reality, the experience in real time, in real world manifest terms, of how your beliefs about life, the universe, God, your power, your strength, love, support, security, safety, the future, whatever, how those beliefs keep you from feeling strong and that you are the source of love. Some of these beliefs will have been shaped when you were formed and shaped and cemented when you were very, very young and everyone else was actually bigger energetically and physically. But many of those, or those actually, all of them, carry over from other lives. So this is an issue across time. Any belief that has kept you small is something that you as a divine being are using to keep you feeling small so that you learn as a human about the power of choice. And where this leads us to is when we perceive we don't have a choice, and what do we do? And this is a route that leads some people to suicide. Some of the people who commit suicide get there this way. I have no choice. I cannot continue. I can do nothing else at this point. And the fact is that this is a part of you speaking. Essentially, throughout this entire teaching, I have, in different ways, been inviting you and challenging you to call forth the part of you that can hear the difference, that can hear what a disempowered part of you is saying and believing, can see through that belief, and can accept these truths of you being a powerful divine being and love being the currency of power in the universe, and aligning with this part of you that can see the difference, that knows better. Everything I do with you, for you, and all these words I throw at you, and this channel so graciously offers you, as he allows me to speak through him, bringing these teachings and messages. Every single one of these opportunities that we interact together has to do with you aligning with the part of you that knows better, that can accept the truth of your divine existence, can accept the truth that you are co-creating every experience in your existence, in order that you, as a divine being, as soul, as a portion of God and Goddess, as a portion of all that is, and the divine intelligence, learn what it means to make choices. When you feel you do not have a choice and you withhold choosing, a choice is ultimately made for you. This is because energies exist in your life. Motion must happen. You're constantly broadcasting energies in different ratios and on different frequencies. Understood astrologically, there are certain symbols that if you do not feed them, every symbol, but certain key positions in charts, if you do not feed them, they will happen to you. This is why astrology, viewed from the karmic angle, as I teach this channel, and he teaches now other people, why it is so important. Because to understand any energy in your life, this map of symbols actually tells you, that is your birth chart. It actually tells you what's going on. And if you do not make a choice regarding a particular set of frequencies in your life or parts of life, a choice will be made for you. So, for example, if you are in a job that is unfulfilling and you resist leaving and changing and being more alive, that job might take care of itself one way or another. You might get caught up in the emotions of being fired. You might get caught up in the emotions of being downsized, being laid off. You might get caught up in the emotions having to do with a new boss coming in that ruins everything and makes it possible that an environment is created that you choose to leave. These are actual situations that the channel has done client work recently. The people are wrapped up in the emotions of these realities. And yet the fact is that it's time for you to go. With any difficult situation, with any painful situation, we always must change. We are not, humans are not built to be willing to experience pain and fear and discomfort and ill ease, being ill at ease. But it is certainly your right to put off change. But life will change around you. So if you do not, so look at yourself, look at any situation in your life where you have felt you do not have a choice. Look at how you got there. You got there by not making choices. And somehow life is trying to make a choice on your behalf. Things must move. Energies must play themselves out. This is critical for you to understand. Now we wish to wrap up the section on the effects on the individual of suicide. But I want to be clear that the soul is not judging a person for doing this. The soul is always loving. The soul is never angry. The soul never feels let down. And your relationship with life and with yourself as the source of love is the key to healing all issues, personal issues that have to do with suicide. Now, as we move on to talk about the effects on others of suicide, and this will, what we have said so far for the second group of people has been intended to help you understand more about the realities of this process. And now we move into more understanding life continuing after somebody in our lives, somebody we love, has committed suicide. All of these things we have said so far, again, are applicable. The soul does not judge. God does not judge. There is no hell waiting for somebody who kills him or herself. People who survive somebody else's suicide must deal with many things. The loss of that person, the loss of that relationship, as well as the loss of that person's what is perceived as potential, that person's kindness, that person's warmth and generosity and heart, and what that person does and offers for others and is for others. Obviously, mourning this loss, grieving this kind of loss is important. And another layer that is important is to look at what might have been done to prevent this. And I want you, if you have survived somebody else's suicide, which is kind of a weird thing to say, but this is what's happened. You have survived suicide. It was somebody else's. I want you to understand that there is nothing you could do to stop that person. Even if that person left you a note that said, "I'm doing this because of you," there is nothing that you could do. This person is a divine being expressing free will. Recently, the channel had a conversation with a client whose brother had passed away from self-causes a few years ago. And the channel said this to her. No matter, even if he left you a note saying, "You are responsible for this," the fact is that you are not responsible for this. Just as people who ask for help but don't really want it, just as people who take help asked for and then don't do anything with it and continue to suffer, every being is a divine being, basically determined to experience his or her own reality to fit his or her own beliefs, the pre-existing beliefs. So what could you have done? Could you have altered that person's beliefs? That person as a being, a divine being with free will? Could you have altered the lens through which he or she saw the world? Could you alter how that person perceived life, experiences, and circumstances? Of course not. Part of you will say, well, maybe, but you couldn't. If a person commits suicide, that person is expressing free will. That person is making the choice to end awareness of what has been happening and to end the process of whatever cycle of pain has been unfolding and perpetuating. It is not common. Well, we should say it this way. In the vast majority of cases of suicide, it is not seen as a plus or a positive or indicative of character, positive character, or, it is seen as a flaw. It is seen as weakness. I'm not saying this so that you change your mind and see it as strength and go do it. This is not the point at all. But for each individual soul's journey, we should not assume we understand the context until we really do. Working on multiple dimensions, as this channel does, it is possible to see and then talk to somebody who has passed away. It is possible to see soul's divine blueprint in the birth chart, and then working with the spirit guides, and then through the consciousness of someone such as myself, an ascended master who has a bird's eye view on what's happening and why, and understands why you're creating what you are, because we understand these higher level truths and live through them on a regular basis. Perhaps you can see if you have tools, if you have this access. Perhaps you can then come to an understanding, but you must understand you could not change a thing in that person's choices. So what could you have done differently? Well, you can now change your mind about why the person did this. And if when you think of this you start crying, please cry. Please allow this pain to be. Yes, you are grieving the loss of somebody who, from the look of it, did not need to die. But you're not in that person's heart. You're not in that person's karmic journey. And you're not in that person's soul's journey manual. So understand, please, that every being, through expressing free will and dealing with the choices, is learning in the end, or in the final analysis, we should say. Every human is learning what love is, where it comes from, and who is responsible for giving it to whom. The channel is a broken record as he speaks my words. He has said this 20 times this month on recordings and with client sessions and in phone calls and blog posts. What love is, where it comes from, and who is responsible for giving it to whom is the core of every human journey. So you have survived someone else's death, someone else's chosen end. Look at this person as a divine being expressing free will. And this chapter, perhaps you knew the person was despairing, powerless, helpless, lifeless, having a death wish, whatever it was that led up to this death, or perhaps you did not know this. Now, in hindsight, look later, whether it's been 3 months, 10 years, or 50 years. Look at this person as a divine being, learning slowly over time through choices, through the expression of free will and dealing with the results of choices, what love is, where it comes from, and who is responsible for giving it to whom. I suggested the affirmation earlier for healing if you feel that you have been personally affected by suicide. Well, this extending this to this second group of people, perhaps those who have not personally experienced it in some life, do not have the visceral or emotional memories, etc. But you have been affected by somebody else's suicide, somebody else's chosen death. Do this affirmation. I am the source of love. View this other person as the source of love in his or her universe and choose to be the source of love in your universe. View this person with compassion, not pity. Compassion, gentleness. Give this person the benefit of the doubt, because it is true that every person does the best he or she can with the tools in play and consciousness level in that moment. I want you now, if you have ever thought somebody was weak because he or she killed himself, him or herself, I want you to start viewing that person as a divine being expressing free will and somebody who took a particular kind of turn on the road to learning about what love is, where it comes from, and who's responsible for giving it to whom, that they will have to deal with in other lives, that they will have to deal with, and accept with compassion, with grace and ease, that each being creates his or her own journey, that you are creating your journey. Suicide may never have been a problem within it, never been a factor, maybe never. Maybe the thought never crossed your mind. And maybe you didn't know anybody who's committed this choice, who's chosen death in this way, for whatever reason. But you're drawn to this MP3 anyway. View yourself with compassion. View these other people with compassion. And let them off the hook for any judgments you have about them, negative character judgments, flaws, weakness, pity. Grieve their loss. grieve their absence, and then move on. Sometimes somebody who does violence to the self, including suicide, fits in with the contracts around the soul, the contracts with other souls around the person, this is what we mean to say, to make others appreciate life. Do you appreciate life now more after somebody you know took his or her own life? Of course. Very rarely does somebody find out somebody else killed the self and then say, oh yeah, I was meaning to do that too. Or, oh yeah, I think I was going to, yeah, no, that sounds pretty interesting. This does not happen. We feel pain. We feel grief. We feel loss. We feel judgment sometimes. That person couldn't stick it out, really? Person didn't have tools, person didn't have faith, really? This kind of judging can happen as well if we're not, well, whether or not we know the person or not. Our major experiences as humans affect us across time. As we spoke about earlier in the context of dealing with the memories of having done violence to the self because of pain or anger or despair. So your willingness to view others with compassion no matter what, and to treat yourself with compassion no matter what, will radiate across time. Will radiate out into other relationships in your life, will change how you vibrate, and will radiate across time. As well as, we should also say, your choice to forgive yourself for all the times you have hurt yourself, in all lives across time. Compassion radiates out. Forgiveness, acceptance radiates. Compassion, love, acceptance, the benefit of the doubt, heal, and ultimately change all of our relationships as humans. So let yourself off the hook for hurting yourself across time. Let others off the hook for having hurt themselves. Grieve the losses. And make peace with the fact that you as a divine being have absolute free will. And then make a choice to love yourself no matter what. Make a choice to create something beautiful with your time on earth, because your soul is trying to get you to figure out how to be inspired to create something beautiful. And let others off the hook for the damage they do themselves. They are divine beings with absolute free will, learning on their human journeys, sometimes through difficult means, just as you are. Thank you for your time and attention. And this is the end of our conversation today. Thank you.